G'day everyone, this is the Tanami X15B, and last time we went away the brakes were, when we got to where we were going, there was no evidence on the way up, but when we got to where we were going the brakes stunk. They were hot, particularly this side. As you can see, we've got brake dust on this rim, and you should not have brake dust with drum brakes on the outside of your rims. It just doesn't happen. So the time before that we went away and the trailer was intermittently pulling left and right, and I thought we had a problem with our electric brakes. I neglected to check it, and then the next time we went away, when we got there, the brakes smelled for hours. The rims were too hot to touch, or this rim was too hot to touch, the other side wasn't. And I'm pretty sure I've potentially cooked the brakes on this side and we'll need to replace them. So today I'm going to do a video of checking the brakes and adjusting and show you how to do it. I'll do both sides, but I'm only going to film this side. So let's get into it, and through the process you should be able to learn how to adjust and check your brakes. So to start off with, to jack the van up, this is just a standard jack out of the Prado. It's nothing special. Well, it's rated at 1800 kilograms, so there you go. But I'm not lifting the whole van with it, just one side, so that'll do just fine. I'm also going to put a jack stand under the chassis once I get it off the ground and drop both the legs on that side, so that should the jack collapse or let go while I've got the wheel off, I don't get crushed to death by the van. I'm pretty sure I can't bench press this, so I need to support it. I'm also going to put a little bit of a block of wood underneath, like so, and you've probably seen a lot of people say just put a block of wood under your normal jack. Well, that's what they're talking about. So I'll get underneath and I'll start lifting it up, and in a second I'll grab the camera off my son who's holding it and I'll show you where I'm putting this, and we'll go from there. So underneath the van you can see here's the springs, and this is the front of the van, so I'm putting it in from the front, and underneath the springs there's a big bump stop and the bolt that comes down through for that, and just behind that there's a nice flat space in there which I'm going to locate the jack into, and I'll wind it up in there, and that's going to be my jacking point. It's pretty safe, the jack can't move, and as you can see I've got it sitting on my block of wood. So I'll go about lifting it up now and we'll come back to you in a second. It's off the ground, handbrake's released. There's the jack stand just here holding the van up. Not holding the van up, just in case it drops. It's still supported by the jack. Both legs are down. I'm not touching the ground, it's just in case. But anyway, so I'll rip the wheel off now. Okay, so the wheel's free. These are heavy, but it's not far off the ground, so it's not a problem. Just roll it to the side. Now our next step is we've got to take the dust cap off, which is this silver thing here, and then behind that will be the castellated nut that holds this hub on, and also adjusts the bearings. So I'll just get a screwdriver and tap that off, and we'll go from there. Alright, so I've just got a flat blade screwdriver, and I'm going to tap it in between the edge of the drum and the edge of here. I could get some mod grips and pull it off, but I've done that before and it marks it a bit, so we'll see how we go. And just like that. Now, I'm not worried about the grease in here because I've actually done these bearings. So there's plenty of grease. It's just a case of now taking the split pin out and keep everything together when you do it so that you don't lose everything. And now, as I pull this drum off, you can probably see this bearing wants to pop out. So I just need to be careful that I can sort of gently wriggle that out. I just don't want it to drop into the dirt. And you might go, oh, there's not much grease in there, but there's plenty of grease, because it wasn't long ago I re-greased them, so they are okay. And now, if I look here, this drum has been hot, so hopefully that'll come off. All right, so it's actually not too bad. So we're looking at our brakes. Inside the drum here, there's a considerable amount of brake dust, and that would be because of the considerable amount of heat that was in there. You can see from here, on the drum here, that it's been really hot. There's actually quite a few hot spots around the drum. It could actually do with a bit of a machine, but as far as everything going, as far as brake pads being okay, there's plenty of pad here and plenty of pad here. Now, I'm just going to clean them off using a bit of brake cleaner. I'm not going to blow them off with air, purely because the dust is bad for you, so you don't need to be sucking it into your lungs. So I'll clean it off with some brake clean to start off with, then I'll get a good look at what I'm actually faced with, and I'll be able to see where we're situated. Right, just going to get myself a rag so I can clean that grease off, and I'll put a bit of grease on before I put it back together. I'm also going to take this brake drum outside and just wash that out with a little bit of water to get rid of the brake dust. But for now, I'm just going to wipe the grease off here so that I can see what we're faced with. Alright, so I'm just going to wipe the stub clean, and then we can have a look. I'll dry, now that I've blown the dust away, I will dry it off with a bit of compressed air in a minute. But I'll take the camera and I'll show you what we're looking at and how it works. Alright, so a lot of people have asked how these brakes work. Firstly, when you apply your brakes, power comes in through this tiny little cord and activates this magnet here. This is your brake magnet. These are replaceable, they wear out over time. They just slide off. I'm not going to try and do it, but they do just slide off that part there, as you can see. When the drum's turning around and around, they are magnetized to the inside of the drum. As you can see, that's what all the wear marks are here. So over time, that will wear out as well. It basically pulls the brakes that way. And as you can see, I'm pulling it that way. And it's activating that front pad, or that leading pad, by pulling it out. That pad doesn't actually do the braking, because if you look at this pad here, you'll see that there's actually plenty of meat still on this pad, but the pad at the back is the one that's worn the most. So the trailing pad, this is your leading pad, which is activated by the magnet. The leading pad basically pushes out against the drum, which then, in the process of pushing out against the drum, pivots or swings the pads backwards. And this pad then wedges out onto the drum, and the rotation of the drum and the action of this, it actually drives this pad here, or this part of the pad, hard into the drum, and this is the one that's doing the majority of your braking. Contrary to what you might think, well, this is activating this pad, but this pad is only forcing this pad out onto the drum and is doing most of the braking. This pad does a bit of the braking, but most of the force is transferred through this one. So that's why this shoe is actually worn more, and it might look like it's pretty low, but there's still a good amount of life in those. I don't have any issues with putting that back together as it is at all. I've seen some people come here and do this job, and they've poured tons of grease into here, because this is a pivot point. You do not want any grease near your brakes at all. So do not grease this. It'll do its own little thing, and the dust from the shoes wearing out will be enough of a lubricant anyway. Don't put any grease in here. The only place you could potentially put a little bit of lube is if you pull it apart. This is the brake adjuster here. If you pull it apart, you could then put a tiny bit of lube on the thread so that this winds and doesn't seize. So that would be about all you could do, and you could put a bit of lube on that. Now I'll show you how to adjust these in a second. The beauty of this adjuster is a lot of brake adjusters have another arm that goes across here. So when you wind this one way or the other, it tends to lock, and you have to then, to release it, you have to push the arm away, and you can only undo your adjustment by doing that. This is only locked in place by this spring. You can see the spring here sits into these little castellated grooves. So you can wind it one way or the other depending how you want, and not have to worry about doing the wrong thing. If you over tighten it, you can simply just turn it the other way and back it off. Now the trick I always have to try and work out is which way do I turn this? And that's the hard part. Sometimes I've found I've adjusted the brakes right off in the process of trying to adjust them up, and then you have to wind them the other way. So I'll go through the process of adjusting this with the drum off so you can actually see what's happening, and we'll go from there. Just going to move, oh, that'll be right. So in the back of the drum, you can see there's this plastic bung or rubber bung. And we've got to pull that out, and that, what you're looking at is, I don't know if you can see, but just in there, when I push this rubber bung out, that is what I'll be looking at from the back. When I poke that bung out and I'm looking from the back end of the brakes, I'm going to poke a screwdriver in there and put it onto the back of this to turn it and adjust it one way or the other. So if I was laying under the van with the wheel off, I would be pulling that bung out and I'd be poking my screwdriver through, and I would be trying, as you can see, trying to adjust my brakes one way or the other, and the screwdriver isn't ideal, but I'm simply going to basically turn it using the screwdriver. I'm going to turn it one way or the other. So if I wind it out, obviously it's going to increase pressure or decrease the clearance I have between the drum, which is adjusting my brakes up and tightening them up. If I tighten them up too much, then I'm going to be faced with a brake dragging situation, which is what I had last time I was away, and they'll get hot. If I tighten them up too little, or I don't tighten them up enough, then I'll be faced with my brakes being ineffective. It's finding that fine balance, that fine line. So I fixed my hot brakes last time we were away by purely climbing underneath the van, lifting the wheel and winding this back about 3 clicks, I think it was, and that was all I needed to do, and it was right. So I'm not going to readjust these brakes, but you purely would get underneath the van, pull that little bung out from behind, poke your screwdriver in, a thinner one than the one I've got, and you would latch it onto the inside of that castellated thing, and you would click it one way or the other like I've just done to adjust it or decrease your adjustment, and it's as simple as that. So I hope that helps. I'm going to go about now cleaning the dust out of that shoe or out of that drum. Then I'm going to put this back together. I'll put a bit of grease on this, put it back together, and that'll be this side done. So as you can see, everything's running a-okay in there. The brakes aren't amazing, but they will live. And that is as hard as it is adjusting your brakes. Okay, so I'm under the van. I'm on the right-hand side now. I've taken the brakes off, checked them, and I had repacked the wheel bearings on this side because I hadn't done it. And now I'm into the bit that I was telling you. I've taken the little bung out, and as you can tell, if I spin the wheel, it doesn't do anything. So I'm putting my little screwdriver through there, and that's the sort of sound you're listening for. And it's a bit of a trick to find it because it's very dark. And I've basically got to keep doing that until it starts making a noise like it's touching. And you can hear it's just starting to now. There you go. Starting to get that grinding. There we go. Sounds like it's throwing a handful of sand in there, but that's okay. That's what they sound like. Now I'm actually going to wind it up a little bit further. And that's enough, I think. So I've been poking into the bottom and flicking that way for this side. Now what I'm going to do is back it off. If I can find it. And I want it and I think that's a better sound. It sounds very much like the other side. It's not a constant drag. It's a little bit grumbly, but that's the sound they make. But that's spinning nice and free. And maybe one more. There, I'm pretty happy that that's plenty. Now I wound it up, as you saw, till it bound up and locked up the wheel pretty much. And then I loosened it off till I've got a nice free spinning wheel. That's beautiful. I'm going to leave it that, let it down, put my bung back in. Don't forget your bung. That's what keeps all the water and dust and crap out of your brakes. They are a bit tricky to get back in because they're a really hard plastic. But there you go. That is checking and adjusting your brakes. So this wheel's back on. I sort of didn't need to film the whole process of putting it back together. But with the brake adjustment, you can just hear that that's touching. If you've adjusted your brakes up and you hear a constant, fairly heavy drag, back it off. Because they're not going to ease themselves off. They won't wear in as such. What they'll do is get hot and they'll bind. And then you'll end up with your van snaking all over the road as one side's blocking up. But you can just hear that light touch, and that's enough. That's all you need for your brakes. Go too much tighter than that and you are risking getting them hot, and you are risking having issues with your brakes out on the road. So that's all you need to do to adjust the brakes on these vans, and you should be set. Check and adjust, make sure you've got plenty of shoe left, and you are laughing. Hope that helps. Just on the side note, towards the end, don't forget once you put it back down, check your wheel nuts. Don't just, if you've done them up with a rattle gun like I just did, make sure you go around them all with a breaker bar or similar at the end. I found that several of mine were loose on the other side just from the impact gun, so save your wheel falling off after you've done this. Just go around and check them in a star pattern. So here, so if you're going to do it, you would check. You'd go here, can't see, here, 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 here. That gives you a nice even torque star pattern.